Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and I'm just so excited because it's September, fall has started, and I'm just so excited to start talking about all the fall content and all the fall books, just everything fall I love. So the whole point of why I wanted to film this video was because I wanted to talk about books that I feel like aren't talked about enough, or books that I feel like need to be talked about a lot more. Is that the same thing? That's the same thing, Anna. Anyway, I feel like everybody's always excited for the next new thing, for the newest release. I was just like, you know what, let me just sit and film books that need to be talked about a lot more. And so I have 4 categories, so romance, thriller, fantasy, and other, and I have 5 books in each category, so I feel like this will be something for everyone, hopefully. Alright, so I think I'm going to start off with the romance category, just because I feel like romance is like the one genre that I always gravitate towards. And so the first book that I will be talking about, it's You Again, and first of all, the cover is just so fall-esque, very autumn vibes. And I remember like people were talking about this book because it only came out about a year ago. This is very Harry Met Sally vibes. I can definitely say for sure that it's not like any other romance book that I've read. It just felt very realistic, and I remember a lot of people not liking this book, and I was like in the minority. I was just like, what do you mean you're not liking the book? I just felt like it felt like so realistic, and you know, with life being very unpredictable, these 2 individuals who met and they didn't they didn't get off on the right foot from the very beginning, and they kept meeting one another a couple more times, and then they were like, hey, hold on one second, I'm going through this thing and I know you're going through something, do you want to go through something together? And they formed a friendship, like this bond, and I thought that was just like very adorable basically. Yeah, and I highly recommend. I don't know why people didn't like this book. And the next book, it's The Hex X. Why is that so hard to pronounce? This is for anybody who's looking for a witchy, small town romance kind of vibe for the fall. It has like a comedy aspect to it, but it's literally for those who are looking for something fun and easygoing story. And the name of the title is literally what the book is about. She hexes her ex by accident, of course, but yeah, I thought this was fun, and I remember I read this years ago, and I mean like years ago, and I still think about this book, and it's one of those books that I definitely feel like deserves a mention, because I read other fun kind of Halloween autumn books and they just didn't hit as well as this one did. Alright, so the next one is, I don't know, I feel like so many people will guess because I've talked about this book so much. It's Corrupt, and it's dark romance, and it's just so fun. And I remember I was reading this one calm down Anna. I remember I started reading this and I could not put the book down, first of all. Second of all, it was, I think, one of those books that really got me into dark romance genre, because I was reading and I was like, huh? Like, I was my mind was blown. I was shocked, and in a good way, of course. And just read your trigger warnings, because there are some things that happen in it that you're basically just giving a side eye. Basically 4 horsemen, and every devil's night they put on masks and they go crazy that one night a year, and they basically do some really questionable crazy things, and they're getting away with things because obviously they have masks, and they are from very well-known wealthy families, so obviously that's why they kind of have masks on. Yeah, but then again, if you are a dark romance genre girly, you probably would have read this one by now, but it's for those who haven't and didn't know about this book that I recommend. Alright, the next book, it's The Highland Fling, and it's just, I feel like every Meghan and Quinn book just hits, and they're always just so good and so bingeable and so funny, and her humor is just on another level. It's about these 2 best friends who end up moving to Scotland, and they're basically running this cafe because the people who own the cafe, they want to go on like this trip, like travel kind of thing, and so they're taking over the cafe and running it while the owners are gone. And so what happens is these owners have a son, and this son is the romantic male love interest in this, and basically the two main characters, they don't really get along from the very beginning. They're off on the wrong foot, but I found this so funny, and then there was an emotional ending at the end. I thought this was really cute. Alright, so last recommendation for romance genre, we have God of Malice. How do I put this nicely? The very first scene in this is absolutely crazy. And again, dark romance genre. But the first scene with the two main characters, they're on the cliff kind of situation. And read your trigger warnings, please. But I just felt like it was giving so much like this autumn vibe. Killian, who's the main character, he's very psychotic. I don't know. It was just very bingeable. I remember like this was just hitting the way that it's supposed to. So for thrillers, we have I Know Who You Are, and I feel like I've talked about this so much recently because it's one of my most recent books that I've read, and I've given this 5 stars purely because the plot twist was so good. I was speechless because I would have never guessed the plot twist. I've talked to other people about this, and others have said that they haven't guessed the plot twist either. But Alice Feeney just does thriller so well, and you really are at the edge of your seat trying to guess, and they're just so fast, so bingeable. I really recommend her books. The whole premise is her husband goes missing and she's trying to see what has happened to him, so it's giving really Gone Girl vibes, but it does not really follow that storyline. And actually the next book that I'm recommending is another one of hers, so it's Daisy Darker, and this one was so good. This is actually the book that I read and fell in love with her writing style and her plot twists. I wasn't really prepared for the plot twist in this, and so it's either going to make or break the book for you. I feel like it made the book so much better because of it. And so basically the main character goes to visit her grandmother for her birthday, and her grandmother lives like on like cliffs kind of situation. So basically like the house is like on this island, and it's very isolated. You really need like a boat to get to it. She's there with her family members, and it's supposed to make all the characters very unlikable. You're not supposed to like any of them at all, and each character keeps getting killed off, and there's mystery of what really is happening and who's behind it. Like, it's so good. Mexican Gothic, I feel like, is just one of those books that I read, and it really stood out for me. I know it's supposed to give horror vibes, but you only really get creeped out at the towards the end, where everything is being revealed of what's really happening in the story. But it's just giving these very spooky vibes, and I feel like it's easier to read about horror things instead of like watch horror things, or at least for me, I can't watch anything that's too scary or gory. But this one was definitely worth it, and I feel like I know people hate on this book because it's in third person, but I feel like it just flows a lot more coherently, like it's a movie you're picturing in your mind, and it's really memorable, and it's eerie. It has that scary, spooky, atmospheric setting in it, and it's a historical book. The main character is going to stay with her cousin in her mansion, and there's questionable things happening. Her dad basically sends her off to see what's the story with her cousin. Yeah, and it definitely it takes you on a ride from there. And then the last book we have for thriller-wise, it's The Family Upstairs, and it's actually so far has been my favorite Lisa Jewell book that I've read. I haven't read a lot of her books, but I remember the plot twist was so good in this one, and it just, I like the fact that like it really made you think that you got the plot twist, but then it slips right, like the rug slips right under your feet, and you're like, oh, okay, so this wasn't it. But there's multiple timelines if I remember correctly, and you get 3 points of views, and basically the main character is adopted, and she's trying to figure out what really happened to her family in that house that she inherited. Again, that spooky, creepy, eerie feeling, and it has also, you know, secrets being revealed. Definitely highly recommend. Alright, fantasy wise, we have, first of all, we are starting off with Serpent and Dove. So it's basically a witch and a hunter, and witches, like, they live in a time where witches get hunted and killed. I remember reading it and I was like really confused, like where is this story going? And then we got the Marriage of Convenience and I was like, oh, okay. So this is one of my favorite romanticises. So it's young adult, and you know, if I'm talking about young adult, that it's good. It's good. Alright, next one we have is Red Rising. So this one is technically a sci-fi, but it just, the sci-fi and fantasy goes really under the same category. And this one is actually so good. If you loved Hunger Games, I feel like you will love this. And it's giving that the main character is a man, and so, you know, there's these trials and things that happen in the story, and multiple times I wanted to cry because you cannot trust this author, because he's worse than Rebecca Yarros. I'm sorry. It's because every time you start liking a character, they just get killed off and you're like, oh, here comes another one. But I really loved his writing style, and I remember how original this felt like, yet it was giving that whole Hunger Games vibe as well, and just it was still original. Because I've read other sci-fi books and they just don't hit like this one does. This one is really, really good and highly recommend. Alright, so the next book that I highly recommend is Six of Crows, and this one is very heavy plot driven and there's barely any romance. You get like tiny little crumbs, but hear me out. It's basically on these 6 individuals who are underdogs, if I may say so, and basically they're trying to pull off the biggest heist of all time, and they're criminals. They're just these characters that you learn to love, and it is part of Grishaverse. However, you don't need to read the Shadow and Bone trilogy before this, but it would make a bit more sense if you did read the trilogy before this, as it happens in the same universe. So there's a lot for this fantasy that is happening, and a lot of terms I feel like would make more sense with it. Rhapsodic, I felt like this was just one of the best romanticises I've read again. So it's basically about the bargainer, and he basically makes deals, and he never makes more than a few deals with an individual, and whatever he wants in return is always like kind of situation where he says jump and you have to ask how high. So if you are ever asking for a deal with him, you really need to be sure that you are gonna do everything and anything that he asks for. And then we get the main character, who is a siren, which I have never read of sirens before in books, but anyway, she is a siren and she has a whole bracelet. She has over 200 beads on her arm. Can you believe 200? And then the bargainer decides to come and collect his favors from her one night, and she's like, where have you been? So there's romance, there's mystery, there's actual plot, believe it or not, and I found it really interesting, and you would have never guessed because I've only heard 2 people, I think, talk about this book. Absolutely criminal. Alright, last category we have other. This one is gonna be obviously a no-brainer. A Little Life. This is my all-time favorite book. Absolutely love this baby. And first of all, read your trigger warnings. It's big, but it's so worth it. For a literary fiction, this has been done so well. First of all, it's about these 4 college students and they become friends, and you see how their life journey takes them on and everything that happens in their lives and what has happened to them when they were younger. It's so beautiful, and I sobbed like a baby, and I mean like I sobbed like I've never sobbed before. I didn't even cry as much when I, you know, went through my breakups. This one was sad. But first of all, any lit fic always gives me fall vibes, and because this one is like the saddest book that I've ever read, I mean, take it as you want. I wouldn't really recommend to read this in the fall, but lit fics are made for fall, and if you're depressed already, don't read this book, please. But if you want to feel that little kick, that feels something, some sort of emotion, yeah, go ahead, read this, of course, but take it at your own risk. And it's just one of those books that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Then we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and this has been the most recent book that I've read. First of all, the illustrations in this is so beautiful, and I did cry at this. I did. And let me just say, this has been one of those books that will stay with me for the rest of my life, because first of all, if you are an individual who feels like you are not enough, if you've felt invisible, or if you feel like time has been slipping away, or just a lot of things, I was relating to this book. And the quotes, the storyline, it was just so beautiful. The only thing I will say, there's multiple timelines happening and they're a little bit all over the place, and you get two points of views, his and hers, but you had to trust the process and trust that the author knows what she's doing. Obviously she wrote the book, she knows what she's doing, and I felt like it just made a lot more sense in the end. So it's called The Naturals, and it's part of the series. There's 4 books in the series, and it's basically really like a lot of these books that I mentioned have like found family tropes, and this one really is also that. So it's about these 5 individuals. Anyways, I found this to be so similar to Criminal Minds, and if you like that, you will love this because it's so fast-paced and so bingeable. I can never, for all of these books I read, I wasn't able to just sit and stop reading them. I just needed to finish the book. I could not put the book down. Back to disturbing books, and this one is called My Dark Vanessa, and this one is, I want to say, it's an important book to read at least once in your life. It's about a student and a teacher. They have an inappropriate relationship. You see how he started to groom her. Alright, and last but not least, we have The Secret History, and this one I absolutely loved. Again, this one was a bit more on the slower side, but this one was so worth it. So it's basically about these college students, and they're part of this secret class society club kind of thing, and so basically very few are allowed to attend, and they need to have permission from the teacher himself. And it's a very heavy character driven book, and it's about these pretentious students, and it was giving so much more than just that, you know, the secrets that they shared and the things that have happened to them, where something did happen and they were united in that, and that is what kept them together. So it's basically dark academia, and I remember how much I was loving these characters and adoring them. To me, they were absolutely perfect when they were really imperfect and they had their own things happening, but it's so worth it in the end, I promise. I just realized that I've forgotten to mention 2 books. I don't know. First of all, we have Hidden Pictures, which is part of the thriller category, and it's basically the main character is a nanny for this very well-known wealthy family, and this little boy who's 6 or 7 years old, basically a very young little boy, comes to her with weird looking picture that he's drawn, and she's like, okay, this looks really strange, especially for such a little boy to be able to draw. And then she just leaves it, and with each picture that keeps being progressed, you know, it just keeps being better and better and better, so to the point where it really looks like an adult person has drawn it. Like, it just looks too professional, and at that stage, really, like, you can tell really weird things in those pictures. So yeah, I feel like just go into this book blindly, like, don't read too much about it, because I feel like that can spoil the reveal. But yeah, it's a bit more on the spookier side. And then the other one that I've forgotten to talk about is The Daughter of No Worlds, which is part of the fantasy genre. And so it's basically, she's a slave, and like in a world of slaves, she's a slave, and she wants to set all the other slaves free. And so it's a romantasy. I'd be surprised. I feel like nobody really talks about this book as much, or barely anyone. Everyone always talks about The Serpent, Wings and Night. Everyone talks about that one because it's her newest release, but The Daughter of No Worlds, I feel like, is so good. The world building is just absolutely chef's kisses, and I wish more people read that book. Alright, so these are the 20 books that I recommend for my fall book girlies. Let me know if you read any of these, what were your thoughts, or if you're going to read any of these, let me know. If you have any fall recs that I haven't talked about, let me know down in the comments down below, and maybe I haven't read it and I will read it. But yeah, I just want to talk about these books and remind people that these books do exist, and to be honest, there's so many books out there, but I do feel like out of all the 200 and plus books I read in the last 2 years. I feel like these are the ones that really stick out to me the most. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!